I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the first people of this land. Thank you to the Dakota people and the tribes who inhabited Minnesota previously to colonial contact. So let's take a moment to give that thanks. Okay, well, welcome. My name is Teresa Sweetland. I am the Executive Director of Forecast Public Art. I'm also the publisher of this fine magazine that has Votan's work on the front of it, Public Art Review. First thing, I want to also thank Angela and All My Relations Gallery for hosting us here tonight for this really pressing conversation. And also note that the conversation is being recorded, as you can see from the cameras here, so that other people can see this online. Our team here tonight is a youth media team for Media Active, so thank you for being here. We also have photos taken by Nadanis, who will be walking around taking photos, so thank you to her for being here. If you don't want to be filmed or photographed, just let us know or let one of our staff know if that's a concern of yours. Just to introduce ourselves, Forecast Public Art, we're an organization based here in Minnesota, but we work around the country. We've been around for 40 years, and we started as an organization founded by artists who wanted to work in public and community spaces. Today, we do three main things. We support financially and professionally public artists. We also are a partner to public and private partners like libraries, universities, cities, and others who want to connect with artists. And then finally, we tell stories. We engage communities with storytelling. And one of the main ways we do that is with our magazine, but we also share stories online, through trainings, through workshops, and other ways. And the focus of our stories is a part of the inspiration for this new series that we're kicking off tonight, Forecast Forward. We're really proud of the stories we tell in our magazine, like the story on our cover of Votan and his mural in Duluth. We'll talk more about that tonight. But we also want to ensure that those stories are ongoing conversations that people are having in communities and that they're rooted in the voices and experience of practitioners who are doing this work every day. And so this is a part of a series of people who are doing this work at what we're considering the intersection of art, culture, place, and equity. So happy to start this first conversation with these two incredible artists. I also want to acknowledge that in this public art world that we're placed in right now, that when it comes to our country's history of colonization, that the public art world has often and sometimes been part of the problem, especially as it relates to monuments and memorials and the commissioning of works even today that continue to inflict some harm and trauma in some cases, and rather than healing us. So acknowledging that we sit in some of that conflict here tonight as we're in this conversation. And so this series is really jumping out of those stories and into our community tonight. So tonight is part one of a two-part series focused on decolonization in public art with Missy Whiteman and Votan. And we chose these two incredible artists from two different parts of the country, working in visual and media arts, and with deep experiences and creative work to share. Big thanks to Votan for traveling here to be with us. I know you're doing a lot of work in the region. And also to Missy for being here on her birthday. Happy birthday, Missy. Part two will be on December 12th at Ananya Dance Theater. And that will be facilitated by Candida Gonzalez and will feature artists Olivia Levins-Holder and Kealoha Fiorara, and will be more focused on performance and dance. So we hope you come to part two of this two-part conversation. I also want to acknowledge that the topic of decolonization may be new to some people who are just entering this room tonight, but we should acknowledge that there are generations and lifetimes of work for all of these artists, and to know that this is a point in a long journey. And I look forward to hearing from everyone tonight about where we are and what needs to be done. So I'm going to introduce Angela, and we're going to get started. So Angela Tusars, Sisseton Wahpeton Ayate, is a public artist and a curator whose work addresses cultural healing through language revitalization. With the belief that language is medicine, Angela incorporates Dakota language into her art as a means of making language accessible to all and raises awareness to the ongoing efforts of language revitalization. She's also the director here at All My Relations. And also, if you saw on the news, is the selected artist for the Walker Art Center's new Sculpture Garden Commission, which congratulations. I'm sure we'll all be following this very closely and look forward to your work. So I'll hand it over to you, Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to All My Relations Arts. There is a few seats up here in the front for people who just walked in. I want you to be able to be comfortable, especially the little one over there. So my name is Angela Two Stars, and I am a fairly new public artist. I moved here to the Twin Cities in late 2017, so I'm also new to the community, and it's been very wonderful, warm welcome for myself. I have a wonderful network of artist friends and people that I've been able to get to know through my work here in the Twin Cities. I've been the director here of All My Relations Arts since May of 2019, so just 4 months. But All My Relations is a project of the Native American Community Development Institute, or NACD, and we strive to create a cultural destination on the American Indian Cultural Corridor. So we work at the intersection of arts and activism. We are Native owned and operated, and we create quality art exhibitions and programming that supports the strength of contemporary Native artists. So I am really honored to be invited to facilitate tonight's conversation. I think I have as much to learn as the rest of the audience, so I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our panelists tonight. Votan is a Native American street artist from Los Angeles who is of Mayan and, how do you say that? Nawa, thank you. Nawa roots. He blends his knowledge of his ancestry, his experience of graphic design and art, and awareness of the issues facing Native people to create artworks which include blending contemporary art techniques with old Mayan symbology to make a statement. And Missy Whiteman is Northern Arapaho and Kickapoo. Okay. Is a writer, director, and producer. She understands her work to be a voice for her ancestors, to foster deeper understanding, and to cultivate positive change. While based in part on traditional cultural ways and ideas, her work also addresses themes of loss in relation to larger cultural forces and the rebirth process of healing and redefinition of cultural identity. So the way tonight's program is going to work is that I'm going to turn it over to the artists, and they're going to have time to share their work, and then afterwards I'll be taking questions from the audience. So I think I will pass it first to Missy.
My name is Missy Whiteman. I belong to the Northern Arapaho and Kickapoo Nations. We're really cozy here. How's it going? Thanks for coming out and being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Teresa, for having this. Thank you, everyone at Forecast, for making this happen this evening. And I really appreciate everyone who's showing up here. I see people who are also involved in museum work, so thank you. So I actually grew up here in the Twin Cities. I'm a daughter, the daughter of Ernest Whiteman. I have strong roots in the arts as well as the community here, and was very fortunate to see the birth of the Native Arts Circle, organizations such as Intermedia Arts, and that's really where my relationship starts with Teresa. So I'd like to begin actually with the first piece that I met you around, and a lot of people don't realize that I'm actually a visual artist as well, but today I'm a filmmaker, and I enjoy bringing my children into the process now. So we'll go ahead and start with the first slide. I think we have the clicker.
Sure, I'm supposed to be trying to technical difficulties always.
So this one here was at Intermedia Arts at the home, comma, land, comma, security exhibit. Can everyone hear me back there? Okay. And this was actually a piece that I created with my father, Ernest. And this is the first and only collaborative piece that's been exhibited. This is an installation. I'm trying to remember which year. I want to say it was like 2012, before that. So
2002 maybe.
I think it was 2002, 2003. Yeah, it was around that time. This piece actually traveled to Basari, Spain, to Bilbao, and was a part of a cross-cultural exchange between the Basque indigenous population and us here. So it's a video installation in acknowledgement of the Sentinels of Turtle Island, and that's the title. I wish that we could go in there and see it, but it was a beautiful piece. There is a turtle which represents North America. The silhouettes on the wall are actually my ancestors, my relatives that are the shadows. The concept really is that we walk, every day that we walk on this land, we're walking in the shadows of, my people, whoever is indigenous to the land, our people's ancestors. Especially in Franklin Avenue, but I'll get to that later. Let's show the next one, please. So this is the video that accompanied the installation, Walk in Shadows.
You put your ear to the ground, you can hear them. The footsteps of our ancestors. A strong heartbeat, beating forever.
The drums shall beat, but my heart shall beat, and I shall live 100,000 years. Shirley Daniels, Anishinaabe, 1969.
Creation stories tell us that we were born from this continent, Mother Earth, Turtle Island. We will forever be connected to our homeland, to the waters, to the animals, to the sky.
The members of the Tribal Council signed this contract with heavy hearts. Right now, the future does not look so good to us. George Gillette, Mandan Pitatsa Rikara, 1948.
We tried to dance, but our feet were bound. We began to sing, but our throats were slit. We prayed, but our ceremonies were outlawed. We struggled to thrive, but our babies, our children, were taken from us. Some died, others returned, speaking unknown language. We had nowhere to run, no one to help us escape. Relocated to unlivable land, we walked the trail of tears until we had no more tears to shed. We fought to save our freedom. Reservation, born disease, alcohol, famine. Are we not human beings too?
Broken families, broken promises, we shall never forget. Grandmother, grandfather, all my relations, we walk in your shadow.
So really this is a brief history of some of the issues in relation to land. So the exhibit itself talked about relocation, immigration, and for our people, we really had nowhere to go during war times, during times that maybe other communities sought refuge here in the U.S. We didn't have that option. So a lot of times it's really important to acknowledge really that relocation and forced relocation happened here, but also happened in other countries as well. And how does that continue today? And it's an always ebb and flow. It is always happening. So that's why it's important for us to acknowledge the history of this country, this continent, and understanding how that affects today and how it continues today. Issues such as boarding schools, how that is continued today within with the border, with imprisonment of children. It's the same thing as what happened in boarding school, minus assimilation. So let's move on. We'll bring it back up. I always like to bring it up. I don't like to stay down. Healing is definitely a part of truth-telling. So really that's what we're doing, is truth-telling. So this one is Time Dreams, and it's just a little taste for you, something, a little eclectic music video. I love music videos. That's really why I wanted to be a filmmaker, was to make music videos. So, okay.
Oh, Time Dream. Anyway, we're going to record this someday, right? We're going to do that. Let's see. Hey, maybe tomorrow. Time dreams. Our memories come from the earth and return to the earth. In the reunion, our pulse comes from the sky and returns to the sky. Reflections of ancient sunlight. Time dreams in human form and reformed. Life in shapes of shadows, of industrially darkened. Reformed humans in behaviors, morality decided by punishment or reward. Punishment or reward decided by obediences, willingness to believe, using the lie like a drug for the heart, silencing questions and feelings with answers of fear and doubt, taking the mind through trips, some self-pity, some anger, some blame, disconnect from time dreams, the medicine of dream time, encoded in the DNA of human form, spiritual, umbilical cords, inside human consciousness, dream time, a place of being, outside of us, inside of us, where we can unhide our hiddens, straight talk with ancestor memories, free without judgment, answers to questions and feelings. Dream time is part of our pulse, memories in the shapes of life. We are a part of that, the breath part. Our memories come from the earth and return to the earth. In the reunion, our pulse comes from the sky and returns to the sky. Dream time. A place of being outside of us, inside of us, where we can unhide our hiddens, straight talk with ancestor memories, free without judgment, answers to questions and feelings, memories in the shapes of life. We are part of that, the breath part. Peace.
It's a little bit jumpy. I think it's just the translation with the system in the back and up here, but it's actually available online as well on YouTube through the Pines. So this is Time Dreams. This is actually John Trudell's last recording, which there's a few other, but this is one that we wanted to make into a music video. And the Pines, they're a local group out of Iowa. They're here now. I wanted to reference what the character was doing. That's my son. It's Plains American Indian Sign Language. So I made a commitment, I'm going to say about 4 years ago, to incorporate Indigenous language in my videos in whatever context that is. So that is including Plains American Indian Sign Language, which was originally a trade language, and is the American Sign Language, ASL, is based off of our language. So this is to honor John Trudell. It's also continuing his legacy, and then also connecting him to this video, connecting to the Coyote Way, which is the next project that I'll show you. This is something we're finally wrapping up and putting together as a package and bringing it to museums, film festivals, and especially tribal communities. Those really are my priority, to make sure that our people have access to movies that are being produced currently. So we'll go ahead and roll with this, and then I'll talk a little bit more about public art.
My name is Louis Whitman. I play Charlie in the short film Coyote Way, Back Home. Going Back Home is the first short film in the Coyote Way trope, rooted in the traditional Native American trickster stories, which runs elements of the metaphysical and physical human. This sci-fi docu-narrative film pushes the boundaries by incorporating time travel, parallel universes.
Is it possible to play off the YouTube? Sorry, it's just filmmaker stuff. So I'll just talk while they're pulling up the video here about Coyote Way. So Coyote Way is actually moving into more installation, public work, 360, what we call expanded cinema. So we're packaging this as a straight screener, but we're actually going to be doing a rescreening at the Indigenesis Gen 3. Can I already say that, Deb? Can we say that? Yeah. Okay, so Deb Gerwood is my colleague who works for Moving Image at the Walker Art Center. And this is our Generation 3. We actually had the first generation previous to the scaffold. And last year was the first year coming back after that. And this year we're creating a lot of different changes within Moving Image, which I want to really acknowledge the efforts, especially on Deb's part, researching and also being willing to change some of their practices, how they relate to artists, even incorporating our ceremonial ways and acknowledging gift giving, as well as digital sovereignty and narrative. So we'll go ahead. This is actually the first trailer. You can just Google the Coyote Way. It'll pull up the Kickstarter page. So this isn't it. This isn't it. So So I want to talk a little bit more about Indigenesis. So Indigenesis is actually, it was a month-long series that highlighted directors. We only screened Native directors from Turtle Island. And last year we had Chris Eyre, Tantum Cardinal, we had Sundance, Native Lab Schwartz, Adam and Zach Khalil. Part of this, for me, is, I grew up, my dad actually worked at the Walker when I was in high school. and he worked in the education department along with Setu Jones and Tekumba Aiken. So like really my foundation is within the walls of the Walker. One of the things that I talked about yesterday in our meeting was I can remember like going through the gallery space and just reading, absorbing every single thing on the wall and feeling like, yes, this is my home, but at the same time it isn't my home because I don't see Indigenous representation on the wall. I don't see, anything in relation to what I can identify as an Indigenous person. So the first exhibit that they had was Year of the White Bear, and it was a phenomenal experience. There's performance film screenings, visual arts installation, and after that was actually the Two Rivers Film Festival with Juanita Espinoza and Two Rivers Native Art Circle. So that was really first exposure. So I think this is it. Yes, let's go ahead and roll this guy. Thank you.
My name is Lois Whitman. I played Charlie in the short film Coyote Way, back home. Going Back Home is the first short film in the Coyote Way trope, rooted in the traditional Native American trickster stories, which blends elements of the metaphysical and physical human. This sci-fi docu-narrative film pushes the boundaries by incorporating time travel, parallel universes, and DNA memory. In the fall of 2015, we completed production of the film and are now ready to move forward with post-production, such as editing, sound, original music score, animation, and promotional materials. This is where you become a part of the Coyote Way. What makes this film so special? There's no verbal dialogue in the film, and the only form of communication is Plains American Indian Sign Language. Historically, American Sign Language is based off this intertribal trade language, utilized in pre-colonial contact. I see this film as a means to document, preserve, and revitalize Indigenous language and culture for future generations. I think this film will change slavery. Because, not all, in these old Western movies where they're wearing their fur bonnets, going around killing people and shooting them with bow and arrows, their names, really weird names. It's not like that, we don't go around killing people and, saying weird stuff and we're just like everybody else, We believe in giving back to our donors and have secured fiscal sponsorship through In Progress, a small nonprofit in St. Paul. Your donation will be tax deductible. Thank you for donating and supporting the next generation of Native actors, writers, directors, and who are an important part of making the Coyote Way, Going Back Home, a reality for so many people. Thank you. Aho.
So it's actually a lot smoother online, just to let you know. It wasn't intentional. So yeah, this is the project that we're moving into through expanded cinema. So we'll just pull to the last project, which is the last slide there. We haven't really come up with a title with it, have we, for Mural on the Ave?
Oh, not yet.
Yeah, not yet. So I want to acknowledge this project next that I worked on. This is like for me stepping back into visual arts.
Freeman.
And I'm so grateful. We're just going to jump to the last slide. This one. That's a youth media produced video, but we'll just skip that because I have a feeling it may be a little bit jumpy. So I'd like to acknowledge this project here. This is actually on the PPL building. It was completed, when did we just August? First week of September, yeah. And I want to acknowledge the other two artists here in the room, Nell Pierce, stand up, hey. And then Julia Meyer, stand up. Maybe we'll stand up. So I was brought on this project by Shaka McCall at Hope Community, and I was originally brought in as a consultant, as a cultural keeper. And it was decided to come on as an artist. And again, I stepped in after like a long time of not practicing. And I'm so grateful for the experience for working with other artists on this project that are so amazingly talented. Like Nella was definitely our mixologist, like that's her name. Like she was like in the zone. I was like, she's mixing on a level I cannot even comprehend. And then Juliet helped with the stars. So we have Badote up there on the upper part, and then on the bottom it's reversed because it's watered. And it has the names underneath. And then on this side we have Tent City, the skyline, and then also TV's upside down. But then we also have the Seven Sisters. And then below is Juliet's rendition of that story. So this project, I mean, I want to bring you both up to talk about it, but I know we have a limited amount of time. It was really intense. We had a month to finish it. And they had been working since May. April of 2019, and had collected stories from the community and had listening sessions. And I came in right before we started sketching. And so it was like speed dating with other artists. and then it taught me to really stay back and to watch everyone and to see how they worked. And it taught me a lot about communication. It taught me a lot about love. It taught me a lot about, sharing, my culture and sharing, grounding that we do. And I'm gonna cry. So this was such a blessing, and you could see in the pride and the hope that it gives everyone in the community. It was such a powerful experience. So it's the history not only of Franklin Avenue as an ancestral trail, but it also is acknowledging, my people's creation story begins here in Minnesota and talks about how the Arapaho, we were moving west during the Ice Age, and the Red River Valley in that area, and the river had cracked, and half of us stayed here in Minnesota and half of us went westward. So that's a part of history that we understand our connection to the homeland here. So that's why Teresa made an acknowledgement of not only Dakota homelands, but previous to that, the other tribes that lived here too. So we have Arapaho symbols for teepee and then buffalo on the end. So that's incorporated in there. And then their history is AIM, the reroute of Highway 55, and then also the history of relocation on other indigenous cultures across the globe. So I'll end with that. I'm not sure how much time I took, so I apologize if I took too much. Okay.
Good evening. My name's Votan. I'm of Maya and Nahua descent. I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I travel throughout the U.S. and other parts of the world doing art. My family comes from Central America. My mom migrated during the 70s and ended up in Los Angeles, where she met my dad. They had their thing going for a little bit and they separated. Never got to meet my dad, but here I am. And my mom migrated to Los Angeles with some of her siblings, my aunts, due to the Central American Revolution that was taking place in the 80s. So I come from the experience of colonialism in the 80s, where the US, Reaganomics, and the administration at the time was heavily influencing the political stability of El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, all of Central America. But also Russia was also influencing it. So my mom really felt no connection to either side, so she decided to migrate and she ended up here, where a lot of Central Americans are today. And interestingly enough, my older brother became a communist when he was in high school. So he recruited me and my other brother, which knew nothing of communism. My mom did not raise us, wanting to be communist. But my brother was all about it because he felt like there was a need to rebel, right? And that also was during the time of the beginning of the hip hop era. So we were influenced by a lot of the political lyrics in hip hop music and hip hop culture, and we were teenagers, so we were bound to rebel anyway. So we were finding any way to rebel against my mom, the family, the government, whatever was out there. So as I grew up, I learned a lot about different movements because of the Communist Party that I was forced into as a kid. And the reason I was recruited was because I was underage and they wanted me to spray paint slogans all over the city. So my brother was too old for that, so I was the one doing it. I would be gifted spray paint if I would write these slogans on the wall that I had no idea what they meant. But eventually, as I got older, I realized that I figured out it had to do with immigration, which we were a part of. It also had to do with different movements like the Black Panther Party, the American Indian movement, the Puerto Rican movement, the Zapatistas later on, FMLN, the Sandinistas, Sendero Luminoso from Peru. So I was very interested in learning about these different movements, and it opened up my mind a lot more than regular public schools in Los Angeles. So I learned a lot about that, and I wasn't really either in support of socialism. There was something that resonated in socialism that is very similar to indigenous cultures, which is based on community, and that was one of the great things about it. But as I grew older, I realized that capitalism benefits a few and many are poor. Socialism benefits a little bit more, but they both destroy the planet for natural resources. And that's something that I was not going to be in favor of. So as I got older, I tried to express my frustrations with society, and the way to do it was through art. So I was a tagger at a very young age, and I evolved into a graffiti artist, and then I just became a fine artist. And at this point, I became a capitalist too, because we have a business, so we need to make money. But we use our income for our family first off. I have 4 boys. With my partner out there behind the doors, he's holding the baby back because he's kind of in a bad mood. He just woke up. But, so we raise our kids doing art, and it's a difficult thing to do because growing up, my family, especially my mom at the time, was against art. She thought it was a hobby. She's like, that's fun, but what are you really going to do with your life, right? So I had to rebel against her before I rebelled against the system. So I continued to do art. I had okay grades. I got through, school. I started to go to college, but I was going to college based on interests that weren't my own. My family was like, you're a good artist, you should be an architect. But that really has nothing to do with my views of the planet itself, right? So I dropped out of college and I just decided to do art. And years later, here we are, traveling and doing art and making a living off of art. So
Yay.
The whole idea,
Yay.
so like the whole process of doing art is, for me, decolonizing art, right? So here are some of the pieces that are part of what I've been involved in the past. So you all know who these characters are, I'm pretty sure. All right? So what I do is I take iconic imagery and I make it tell our story. It tells our story in our narrative. And the reason why that is very important to me is that the youth are the ones that are watching this. It's not so much for people my age or older, but more for the youth, because I feel that in America, we aren't really told the truth about American history. And I feel that it is very important that we are able to teach that to the children. In our history classes to this day, one of my sons came home one day and he said, Dad, they're saying that the Aztecs were brutal murderers. And I said, well, that's part of the story, but that's not the entire story. I said, people murdered in all cultures around the world. I said, but the narrative that's being told is to make us seem like we are brutal killers. So you could debate that. I said, because, you know, history itself will tell you the truth. I said, he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, what else are they saying in your class? Well, they said that in order for the sun to rise, we had to kill virgins. And I'm like, okay, think about that. Logic. There's nothing more truthful than logic. I said, think about that. If we were to kill all the virgins in our community, what would happen to our community? We wouldn't be able to reproduce, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Secondly, I said, for the sun to rise, I said, you obviously are aware that we had calendars, right? We knew about equinoxes, solstices, we knew about seasons, so we were obviously aware of the cosmos. So if we had calendars, we knew the sun was going to rise the next day. We didn't have to sacrifice a virgin for that. So he started to understand that, and he actually went to school. I met up with the teacher, and luckily the teacher was very open-minded about that perspective, but she was going based off of what was in the books, right? So I also feel that it is my responsibility as an Indigenous person to narrate the story, because we were talking about this earlier, how being Native is so novice, right? It's something that is new, but in reality it shouldn't be, because we've been here for thousands of years. And what's great about living in these times today is that we are able to tell those stories. But at the same time, we have to be as truthful as possible with the stories that we tell. So we have to research, and that's one of the most important things that I feel I try to do with the art. So the topic here is colonialism. And I want to share what I just heard about 2 days ago when I was up in Duluth. We were here for the Indigenous Foods Expo. And Leah told me that online people were attacking what we do because we use the word decolonize constantly. We have hats, we have sweaters. As you can see, my friend there in the back has a decolonized sweater. And we took the Dodgers font and flipped it. So we talk about decolonizing constantly. And our own community was, hey, you guys are pimping this word and you guys are just playing this word out. It's not going to mean anything anymore, right? And then while in Duluth, they tell us that there's an organization up there that has been around for over 30 years working on issues like the missing and murdered Indigenous women and different issues that Native people face up there in Duluth. And because of the current administration, that organization has been told that they cannot use the word decolonize or decolonization, and that they cannot use words like historical trauma. So then we stood there and we thought, okay, our own community is upset about using the word decolonize, and the government is upset about using the word decolonize. So what seems to be the problem? The problem is colonization, right? So sometimes we ourselves colonize each other. It's no longer the system that is colonizing us, it's we colonize us. So we have to be able to change that. We have to be able to fearlessly tell these stories and address these issues. If we're gonna create healing, we need to have these types of conversations. And why does it upset people that we use the word decolonize? Because it empowers people. And that is what causes fear, right? Most of us as Indigenous people want the same thing everybody else has, as I'm sure the African American community and the Asian community, who have all suffered colonialism. And now at this point, colonialism, like I said, affects everybody. So here's an example. I was just telling Teresa earlier today. I did a mural in Ecuador about 2 years ago. And we visited the tribe that's in the Amazon. We painted a mural there in a small community, and they took us to the outskirts where the Shuar tribe lives. The Shuar tribe is basically known as the headhunters. They were the unconquered tribe of the Amazon. And I sat there and I talked to one of the leaders of that community. And he made his way back to town. He had a Facebook page. And he asked me for my Facebook, page online or whatever. So he was on Facebook. So we went back a couple of days later, and I sat there talking to him, and he said, "Hey, I followed you on Facebook." So I was like, that's kind of crazy that, this person is in the Amazon, living in the Amazon, but has a Facebook page. So he looked at all the stuff that I do, and he said, "I want to do what you're doing." And I said, "Man, that's amazing." He goes, "But how can I do that?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "I want to print t-shirts, and I want to sell hats and mugs." And I was like, "Man, I would love to help you." And as I thought about that, I realized that I could be the colonizer. Because if I bring silk screening to this community, where are they going to put their trash? They don't have recycling centers. They don't have ways of getting rid of the waste that is going to be created from this. So I had to stop and think about it, and I don't want to make them feel like I don't want to help. But I feel that there needs to be a collective working to create methods and ways of helping communities where it's viable and it does not have an environmental impact in their communities. So luckily, we talked to several of the other members from that tribe there, and they said that they were working on natural pigments. So I told him, the best bet, I said, is for you to figure out how you can print with these pigments, because these pigments are not going to create waste. I said, maybe we can create a page or something where we can help fund this, and you guys can create a natural pigment which will generate income for you guys to be able to print things. So we've had this conversation, but it's very difficult to go back and forth because he only goes into town for like an hour or two once a week. But the idea is there, and I feel that that's how we have to be able to change things, is to acknowledge, as we did in the past as Indigenous people, that you have to acknowledge the impact you and what you create is going to have on the environment. And I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to colonialism, is the impact you're going to have on its people, but also the impact you're going to have on the planet itself. Now this piece right here is based on the Amazon. So before I went to the Amazon, I got to share with you, our minds are powerful, and I know you've probably heard this from New Agers, but thoughts can become things, right? At first I did not believe that, but it really happened. I painted this about 6-7 years ago, and I ended up there in the Amazon with these tribes. And I realized that there's a lot of issues that we are facing that we're not addressing that come from within us internally. So this piece is called autoimmune disease. So autoimmune disease, I'm sure many of you are aware, is AIDS, cancer, diabetes. It's anytime your immune system attacks itself, or your body, your healthy cells, whatever it may be, right? So this piece is showing, the right side here, a man dressed up in riot gear, which represents our immune system, and it's attacking what I consider the healthiest cells on the planet, which are the people that live in the Amazon, that have the least impact on the planet. And that's what's going on externally, but that's also what's going on internally, because that's what's happening to our bodies, right? With things like diabetes and all these other diseases. So that's just a reflection that the earth is going through what we're going through. And in order for that to change, we have to change. Because that's not going to change without our bodies and our minds being healthy. So that's why this piece represents exactly that. because autoimmune is not just within us, but it's outside of us. You want to go on to the next piece? So again, going based off of iconic imagery, the LA, living in Los Angeles, I never realized until perhaps I was a teenager that there's nations that have lived in Los Angeles for time immemorial, the Tumba people. And nobody had ever acknowledged that until recently that Tumba people started reclaiming their own territory. They are not state or federally recognized, because when that takes place, that means that they're gonna have to be gifted land. And of course, the government's not gonna wanna give up prime real estate, which is Los Angeles. The piece on the right is based on, as you all know, Star Wars, right? So Insurgents is our collective. And as Insurgents, we decided to take something iconic like, the fonts of the movie, but also to show where some of the ideas of some of these characters that are so famous in Hollywood, where they come from, right? So that is a Hopi woman, and this piece is called The Real Princess Leia. Can you go on to the next one, please? Is that it? So, I think there's a couple more if you want to keep scrolling there. Oh, this one here. So this is the piece that Teresa was mentioning that's on the cover of the magazine. And this piece was produced by Derek Brown, who's sitting there with the You're on Indian Land hat, Leah Lewis, who's behind the windows there, Baby Balam, who's probably running around back there, and myself. We were hired to paint this in Duluth, Minnesota at the American Indian Community Housing Organization. And this perhaps has been one of the most impacting experiences I've had in my life. The reason is because first off, and most importantly, this project came to existence because of women. And I feel that it is a very important time to realize and acknowledge the fact that women are taking control of a lot of things. And as a man, I'm happy to see that happen. I truly am.
Amen.
And I feel that I'm also happy to see that there's a woman in this piece. A lot of my pieces have been men, and I've been questioned why, and it's because I guess I'm just a male. But I've learned to embrace the feminine side of myself and our relatives as well, right? So this piece, we were hired by Honor the Earth, who was led by a woman named Winona LeDuc, Michelle, who runs the Indian Center, who is also a woman, and Cheryl, who works down there, who's like the jack of all trades. All these women came together to make this piece possible. And it represents the missing and murdered indigenous women, and it also represents the water protector. So the story of the piece is based on the pipelines, right? The part where our women are the victims, but our women are also the heroes of this story, because there was a lot of water protectors that are women, and were women fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline, Line 3, and even the line down in Louisiana, I believe. So I kind of mixed also the ideology of Zapatismo. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but in 1994, the Mayan community of Chiapas, which is made up of several different bands, came together and revolted against the Mexican government during the NAFTA free trade agreement deal that took place. The reason they revolted was because there's a law that was changed to benefit corporations. So Article 27, I believe it was what basically instructed that the land belonged to the people that worked the land. But when NAFTA came into effect, that was changed to the land belongs to those that can prove it's theirs. So as indigenous people, most of the time we don't have titles to the land because we've been living on these lands for thousands of years. So that created an uproar in Chiapas, and that's why the Zapatistas revolted, because they've been living in those communities that were going to get infiltrated and extraction was going to occur. They were going to extract minerals and wood and everything, and basically destroy their habitat. So the Zapatistas used to wear bandanas and ski masks. And one of the most important things that I learned about that movement was that the Mexican government tried to portray them as cowards for hiding behind bandanas and ski masks. And their response to that was, this is not about me hiding behind this mask, but me becoming a regular human being behind this mask. Usually, when we see images of people, we want to know who is behind that mask. And what the Zapatistas will talk about is, it doesn't matter, I'm a human being. You don't have to know my name. You just have to realize that I'm a human being. And that was the idea behind this. Like, there is no actual name for this person, but now there is, because the community decided to give her a name. So one of the most important things too was that the community started to get involved. People wanted to paint, and we had about 50 to 60 people come by and paint a brick or paint a flower or do whatever to help. And at first my ego was like, no, you guys don't know how to paint, but we had to correct a lot of lines, and it was okay. I had to let go of my ego and allow the community to come in. And once that happened, it was amazing. Food started coming and visitations, and so it became a different experience than just these strangers that came from LA to paint a mural. So the people actually felt represented in the mural itself. After the mural was done, it took us a lot longer than we anticipated because of the weather in Duluth. And the unveiling took place, perhaps I'd say 3-4 months later. One of the most important things too was when we had the unveiling. When we painted the mural, I was like, okay, thank God we're done. Like, it was exhausting, 3-4 layers of burnt skin painting in the sun. And eventually we got through it, bed bugs, because we stayed at raunchy little hotels and all that. But anyways, we finished the piece, the unveiling took place, and we saw several elders cry when the piece came down because they have relatives that have gone missing. And I think that was very important, because now when you drive into Duluth, you are forced to see this piece, and the conversation started. And now there is an acknowledgement for that problem, and all these task forces are being created throughout different states to acknowledge this problem. And I think that's what art creates, and that's the process of decolonization. Thank you.
Sharing. That was incredible. I wanted to be able to open up to the audience right now for any questions that you have for either one of the artists with us tonight.
The Plains American Indian Sign Language, that's friend, together, and peace. So that's the translation, and he repeats it throughout.
I don't have a question so much as just thanking you both. As an early childhood educator, I just think it's very important that we continue to educate and empower, and especially our youth, making them aware of just differences. And so I thank you both for that.
Thank you.
Just to echo a thank you, but I think when the images I see, and not even so much the comments you make, but the images I see, make tears well up in your face. This is powerful. I think the work in shadows. It's just inspiring and creates an awareness, I think, for me. And so thank you.
It's interesting that you say that, because I usually don't tear up when I see my art because I'm like, oh, okay, I got it done next. You know what I mean? But when we paint, like a lot of emotion goes into it, a lot of experiences go into it that we don't acknowledge. And as a man, a lot of times, growing up in, you know, tough city like LA, like we kind of like suppress our feelings a lot of the times. And I think it's important that we have these type of experiences where people feel that way, where they do tear up, because it also allows us to release, you know. And again, going back to that mural in Duluth, when I saw the elders crying, like I just turned around like and cried without anybody seeing me, but I felt like I needed to let go, you know. And I think that's part of the healing process, and I think it's very important that we are able to do that. And again, I feel that because there is more women involved, it allows us to be emotional, and I think that's very vital to our, you know, existence.
So one of the things that Votan talked about is like how we're shifting more into the feminine, and it's not so much about power. For Indigenous people, we acknowledge our two spirit relatives as special and unique and a part of our society, and gender really didn't exist for us. Even though we did have gender-based roles, dependent on what our purpose is. So for my tribe, our two spirit relatives took care of the orphan children. Like that was their main role. But right now, you know, if we talk about like power and we talk about what that means, I think we think about a colonized mindset of money, power, materialistic wealth, those kind of things, the hierarchy. So for me in filmmaking, that's something that I try to dispel by creating a creative collective and having people come forth who taking turns in leadership. Even though I may be in the forefront, it means that there are so many people behind me as well that are doing this work. Just like with our mural, you know, it was mostly women or, you know, by birth, female energy on that wall. And one of the things that I think we gave a lot of other women in the community, like power. They felt empowered because they're like, oh girl, you know, like every time they're like, is this women? They'd see all women on the wall. And I was like, phenomenal. It was just such an amazing and beautiful process. And for us, it was really emotional and heartfelt. And some of the lessons and some of the teachings that came with this project, we can't even repeat. You know, we just had to experience. For us, it was really about that process. And then also to speak to emotional intelligence, you know, for our men. Like that's the main thing that I see this switch happening, is for our men to be able to be in touch with their feelings and emotions and be able to have empathy for other people. And you know, with our project, it's like we showed our strength as females, physical strength, mental strength, creative strength, spiritual strength, all of these different strengths. And to me, we all have this within us. We all have this ability. But I also saw a lot of gender switching within our group. Like I really did see that. I saw those of us who identify as gender fluid bring all parts, you know, to the table, which I think we as human beings need to do. To be able to be feminine, to be masculine, to be in between, to be whatever it is that we feel the situation needs.
Mm-hmm. My question is for Missy. Votan, I didn't hear yours in this, but once I ask the question, also feel free to answer if it comes up. Missy, what is the significance and the purpose of using or having your children be a part of your filmmaking?
So one of the things that is instilled in our culture is giving back. So you always think about 7 generations ahead. You think about the impact, like Votan was talking about, what is your impact as an artist? And for us, it's really what are we learning and what do we teach to our future generations? So for me, it was with my dad. So he taught me that. Whoever taught him was his grandparents, his great-grandparents. And how do we instill that in the next generation? For me, being a mother, Lewis has always been a part of my creative process, and Molly as well. She's in my films now as well. Teresa was one of the first people who Lewis let hold for a long period of time when he was an infant. So to me, being a mother is just as much a part of creating art and having my child there, because they're not going to learn this in the education system now the way that it is, with arts being taken out. One other thing is also giving back to future generations. So one of the videos we weren't able to play, but you can actually look it up, is on my reservation. We have a youth media team, and we have a small media production that was established over 6 years. And so our youth are producing videos. They're getting hired to share their story, to tell their story, and to understand how the technology how it works. We have 3 youth right now who are in college, 2 are going to school for, one mass communication, the other one filmmaking. And he is going to be here this summer with me as not an intern. He's taking like a capstone project, and he told me what he's doing. He's like, Missy, I'm taking this class and I'm going to come here to Minneapolis and I'm going to work with you. And I want to acknowledge my little sister, who is also an apprentice, Elizabeth Santana. I'm totally going to embarrass her. But I'd also like to talk about bringing back, as artists, as older artists, those of us who have skills to share with the next generation. Please consider apprenticeship. Please consider inviting a young artist to talks like this, or to even your studio and your practice. Because right now, our young ones can't afford film school or arts education that maybe I got, or people older than me did get.
I think he's going to answer for
sorry. Well, as for me and my youngest son, involving him is he was basically born on the road with us, so he's just basically been part of everything we've been doing for the last 2.5 years. As for the older kids, I think it's important for them to see also firsthand what we do, because a lot of times family, friends influence them as like, oh, your dad's not here, he's always gone, so we have to be able to show them that we're doing something constructive that is eventually benefiting them more than it's going to benefit us. And I think it's very important to involve kids, especially right now, because I honestly feel like if we're going to leave this planet in such terrible shape, like, we have to already get these kids ready for that, to try to make things better, to think critically. Some people might not think kids should be thinking critically, but I think it's vital right now. It's necessary, so we have to be honest as we possibly can with them, and how things are not going in the way that they're supposed to be going. So, sometimes there's gifted children that have great ideas and can help change things, and we have to have that hope.
Okay, let's see if I can articulate all that's going on up here. First of all, thank you both so much. This is sort of a 2-part question. So thinking about how in this capitalist system, the singular artist, the individual artist is really celebrated, and it's sort of this idea that you are this one person with this brilliance flowing through you, and you have to make it and climb on each other's backs to get the funding and limited resources. That's kind of like the game that artists are told they have to play. And even with public artists, to me, public art is only as good as how much it engages with community, whether that's it being visually accessible to people or actually engaging them in the process. And so I'm curious, in your experiences, what you spoke a little bit to the community engagement with that mural, people just coming and painting, but and I think there are also sometimes community engagement is a buzzword, or people sometimes do it to check a box, and it's still celebrating the individual or the one organization. But what are the most effective ways that you've found to engage community that is actually creating transformation within the community? And also, what are ways that you think artists can support other artists and make the sort of field of artists more accessible to young people, where it's actually sustainable for artists to be artists and take care of each other and ourselves. That's a lot, but community engagement and how can artists support other artists and advocate.
So community involvement, I think, goes, to spend some time, I think, within the community as creatively as you possibly can, especially with the youth, I would say, because like they're the ones that are gonna be the next generation of that community. Like when we painted the murals here at Little Earth, that was 5-6 years ago. Believe me, I've gotten better. But when we did that, the kids at first were like, they were trying to get them involved, right? So they had like a workshop and they were like standoffish, like, no, like, we don't wanna like paint, we don't care, whatever. But after several days, like trying to teach them how to spray paint and how to stencil, they were a little interested, and then they were told, okay, you guys are gonna get paid if you paint. So they all started showing up, which I was like, okay, it's capitalism, right? So, but what was interesting was that the 3 or 4 kids that were considered the worst kids in that class ended up being the most dedicated kids. Like, it was funny, like, I was staying at a friend's house down the street, and I had to be there at 10 every morning to start painting. And 3 of those kids would be like, so are you gonna be here tomorrow at 10? I'm like, yeah, I'll be here tomorrow. And then I'd show up at 11 and they'd be pissed, like standing there waiting for me. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you guys are here. Like, you guys are terrible at school, you never show up, but you're showing up to paint? They were like, yeah, we like this. I'm like, okay. So then it made me realize, like, I have to pay closer attention to some of these kids because a lot of the kids are being neglected. So doing a project like painting and getting kids like that involved is giving them the attention that they're seeking. And there might be several gifted kids. So that's one way I think. What was the other part of the question?
Just how artists can support other artists and make
So,
the field more sustainable.
That right there has a lot to do with ego, right? All artists have huge egos, including myself. And one of the hardest things to do as an artist is to share the stage, right? And even going back to me letting other people paint and trying to feel like I'm in control of this mural, like allowing that to happen changed a lot of things, right? I've heard it as a quote before, like, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change, right? So because of that, I stepped back and I was like, okay, how can this be more of a us experience and not a me experience? And as an artist, it's like, oh, you put your name, this is you, a picture of you, right? So you have to try to balance that out. And I feel that, it's not so much about, oh, I'm gonna pass the torch on now and I'm not gonna have any use for it, it's all yours. It's like, let me light your torch and let's light that person's torch. And it's like, we can share it. There's enough for everybody. I used to think that was stupid, but reality is like, there is enough for everybody. There really is. And if you believe that, more will come. More opportunities can come. I mean, there's millions of walls around the world. You don't have to paint in this community, you can paint in 1,000 other communities. And it's the work that needs to be done, I think. Nowadays, with like social media, people feel like they have a platform online, and now they're an artist because they have 50,000 followers. It's not about that. I feel like it's more important to be in the community and know the people of those communities. Because you could be, I'm sure you've seen the meme online where it's like, if they were to delete your page, are you still a revolutionary? Right? Are we? Like, are we still famous? We're not. You know what I mean? And it's not even about fame. It's about the work, right? A lot of people are like, oh, you think you're all that because you're painting in that community? It's like, no, like, it's hard. Like, when we're painting at Little Earth, there was shots being fired when we were there. Drug dealing sometimes. That happens. You know what I mean? Like, things like that happen. I did a mural in LA and I got robbed for all the materials. So, things like that happen. Are you willing to go through those experiences? You know what I mean? It's not that easy. And I think that's the fear that people have is having to go through these difficult experiences, but also too, if there's more people doing it, it becomes normal, which is something that should be normal. Parents can tell their kids, look, you can be that guy, he paints and he gets paid. You know what I mean? But instead, kids are being told, well, that's not a real job, that's just painting. You know what I mean? So we have to basically take control of that narrative and get more artists involved.
So one of the things too that with filmmaking is you have to rely on a team. You can produce on your own, but it's really hard. It's very hard. And really, honestly, the mural project taught me more on how to work collectively. That was the largest project that I had ever worked on with other artists. And it's true. It's like sometimes you have a vision as an artist and you're like, this is my vision and here we go. And other times, like with Juliet, I'm gonna tell you, like she was like, let me just get it done. And I'm like, but we have to be really slow and methodical because that's what I learned. And at the same time, it was like, for me to step back, like that's the biggest thing, to share space, to step back, to share space. And for me, I see myself as, if we're talking about younger people, I'm showing my world in my life. My whole entire intention is for future generations, like my nephew over there, Jackson, and to be like, yo, this can be you too. You can do this too. This is a billboard for what you can do, especially for me on my reservation, because my family left our homeland. We left our people to be out in this world and to create something and to represent our people. But also for me, it's like helping younger people to say you can leave. You can leave the reservation. You can make a life. You can represent your people elsewhere, but always know where you come from. And so that's really that's the first part. With other artists, what this project taught me is like, how can I use my strengths that I have, that I've learned in this lifetime, to help other artists. Like for example, with murals, is there a set rate that we have? What insurance, when we're making our contracts, make sure that we have insurance, that we're covered if we fall off a scaffold, that we're gonna get covered. The second thing, what is our base rate for payment? What is the cap for that? Because I feel like I have so much respect for muralists, like so much respect. And if people ever come to me for projects, I'm like, do I have a dream team for you? Because to me, I'm like, I know I can't do this work alone at all. And with filmmaking as well, I can't do that alone. It just means, we're in the forefront because somebody has to clear that path. That's it. Like, that's all I see that I'm doing is like, my dad cleared the path this far, and now I'm going to continue to clear it even further and wider for the next generation. And that's why I do what I do, but at the same time using we. You know what I mean? Like, it's we. This is about the people that are standing beside me that don't always want to be in the forefront, because there are a lot of people that are standing beside me that don't want to be in the forefront for whatever reasons. And then for including community, it's really making relationships with people and seeing the strengths and seeing the beauty in them, regardless of where they come from, and making them feel welcome within the space that you're creating. And that everyone has a gift to share with whatever it is that you're creating. And there's always touch-ups, right, Juliet? She totally was like touching up my work, and I was like, thanks. I appreciate it. So that's community engagement right there, and it's also like stepping back and being like, I don't know everything as an artist. Like, I have no idea. Like, I really don't have any idea. I'm just following, like John Trudell says, I'm just following the lines. I'm following how things align and saying how can I include other people and bring people in. To me, this is a big party. You know what I mean? Like with Indie Genesis, I'm like, what's opening night gonna look like? How many people can we bring? Can we have a big theater? Can we do this really big for our people, for our community? And that includes everyone, not just Indigenous community, everybody. Because like the messages that we have now are now for human beings. It's not just for the Indigenous community. It's something that could help our earth, help language help cultural revitalization, but also helping us to find those holes, fill those, and heal those holes.
Thank you, everybody. Those were wonderful questions and wonderful responses. I just wanted everybody to take a minute to thank the artists for being here tonight. We are done with our program. We got done right in time. So I learned so much from you both, and I just want to thank you guys for being here and sharing with us your work and just this incredible conversation.